before we begin, it's always important to us to acknowledge the traditional lands that Royal Roads is located upon. So Royal Roads acknowledges that the campus is located on the traditional lands of the Kusepsum and Lekwungen ancestors and families. There has been a long, long history of teaching, learning, and gathering on these lands. And it's with great gratitude that we're able to live, learn, work, and play on the traditional lands of the Kusepsum and Lekwungen families and ancestors. So as mentioned, my name is Selena Kunar, and I'm here today to help navigate our conversation around our Master of Arts and Graduate Diploma in Educational Leadership and Management. I'm an education advisor here at Royal Roads, and we have some awesome people online who are going to tell us much more about the program, starting with Dr. Frederic Fovet, Program Head of our MAELM program. Hi, Frederic. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on. I'm an associate professor in the School of Education and Technology, and I'm the program head for the MAELM program, which is the focus of this webinar. And I'll be jumping up in a few slides after Selena to tell you a little bit more about the program.
Awesome, thank you. And we're also joined by someone you can't see in the video, but you'll definitely hear from in our chat box, Lisa Murray. Lisa's part of our wonderful enrollment services team. So any questions that come up for you, please pop them in the chat box, and all three of us are here to help answer those questions. So you've learned a little bit about who we are, and we'd love to learn a little bit about all of you. So if you feel comfortable taking the chat box for a cruise, let us know, where are you joining us from? What are you hoping to get from today's session? The answer to these questions will help us inform the information we're sharing today and make sure that you get all the information that you're looking for. While our introductions are coming in, we see one from Lisa here already. Thanks so much, Lisa, joining us from Saanich, BC. So while those introductions are coming in, I'll quickly explore how we're going to spend the next about 45 minutes together today. So we're going to head on over to an exploration of the Royal Roads University experience, talk about our exciting programs, and cap off with walking through the application process and chatting a bit about the requirements of these programs. And of course, we'll leave time for questions and conversation at the end of our session, but we really encourage you to ask questions as we move along. So taking a peek in our chat box, we have Renee from Red Deer, Alberta. Of course, Frederic joining us from Royal Roads campus. We can see the window in the background. It's looking beautiful over there. So please continue to pop things in the chat box, as it's such a great way to get a feel for everyone who's in the room today. So speaking of Royal Roads and our beautiful campus, here are a few pictures that let you know what it looks like most of the year. We're pretty lucky that because in Victoria, BC, there's quite a mild climate, it doesn't look too different than this too often. So in the top left corner, you see a picture of Hatley Castle. This sits in the middle of our campus and is probably the claim to fame, with things like the X-Men movies, Deadpool, and some Disney movies being filmed there as well. Very close by, we have a variety of curated gardens. So here you see our Japanese gardens. Not too far from our gardens, we have Esquimalt Lagoon. Esquimalt Lagoon is actually a bird sanctuary as well. So lots of fun critters exploring what the lagoon has to offer. And finally, we have a picture here to depict online learning. Online learning is, of course, very relevant in these turbulent times. And it's important to us to share that here at Royal Roads, we've been exploring online learning for over 25 years. So we're very fortunate that when these turbulent times were upon us, we were able to pivot quite quickly to provide our students, staff, and faculty all the resources they needed to continue their excellent learning environments online. And we'll talk a little bit more about what online learning looks like in this program shortly. And that time has come. So over to you, Frederic.
Hey, Selena. Let me just move the chat out of the way. So I'll tell you a little bit about the program today. The aim is not to overwhelm you, so we're going to try and keep it short on the details, but try and give you a nice broad overview of all the questions that you may have. But feel free, if there's anything specific that comes up, to either put it in chat and we'll respond right away, or you can bring them up, those questions at the end. So the general purpose of the program I'm going to read to the slide is to help aspiring and existing school administrators develop the knowledge and skills that will enable them to function as effective leaders in today's changing environments. Obviously, today's changing environments is a key term. It's changing very rapidly, as you know, with COVID, and this is something that is addressed within the program itself. More broadly, a question that pops up here often is, do I have to be a teacher? Do I have to be a teacher within the Canadian system? The best way to describe the program is to say that it targets really people who have so far focused on pedagogy, focused on teaching, and are interested in moving towards a leadership role. So within that, you may encompass people from very different roles, right? So it's not just necessarily K-12 teachers in Canada. We actually will talk about later. We have educators joining us from around the world and from across Canada. Sometimes those people are in the public sector, sometimes in the private sector, sometimes in other institutions where the MAELM program is very suitable to. I'm thinking about language schools, sort of NGOs that are interested in education as well. The key really is that we're looking at candidates who have experience in the classroom, experience as in some capacity as educators, and are thinking of changing their orientation towards more of a managerial role, more of a leader role. And that's really the key appeal. We'll go to the next slide, Selena, thanks. Here you have some key values that we keep showcasing and returning to in the program through your 2 years. They are presented as a circle, and you will see that the circle will come up several times in the slides that follow, because obviously a lot of these values are interconnected. So they should be seen as a circular process rather than individual sort of isolated values. Enhancing self-awareness. This is a program that usually targets people mid-career, or at least when they've had a few years of career experience behind them. And a lot of the program enables you to take a little bit of distance from your practice and to reflect on how to improve that practice. So it gives you that sort of reflective distance. Working effectively with others, obviously that's a key characteristics for any leadership profile. And we do that both in terms of the content of the course, but also in terms of the format of the program, because you will see in later slides that we work from a cohort model. So you will continuously be working collaboratively with others. Being inquiry-oriented is really something that you will see mentioned several times today. What we mean by that is the fact that you are exposed to literature and to conceptual content, but we want you to be able to take that content right back to your work environment. So that's what we mean by inquiry orientated, that it's not just learning in the abstract, but it's taking all that knowledge right back to your work environment and be able to apply it. And that eventually builds into a final, well, there are two pathways. So either the thesis, in which case you spend an entire year investigating an issue within a context, or a shorter version of that is a capstone project, which all students have to take. So if you don't take the thesis, you would have to take the capstone, and that's a 6-credit course where basically you do an applied research project. And usually that research project is based within your environment. Looking around quickly, I'm not going to spend too much time going to everything in detail, but applying systems thinking, this is a very key characteristics of the program as well, in a sense that we try and show you the connections that exist within educational environments between all of the different variables. So as a teacher, it's very easy to really focus mostly on your teaching and mostly on your relationship with the students. As soon as you start thinking in terms of leadership, obviously we have to think of community, of parents, of leaders, of the people that you supervise, of the student body. So all of these become systems, and that's what we mean by system thinking. So all of the literature that you are exposed to during the program makes reference to this, what we sometimes call ecological dimension, in a sense that problems, issues, themes are never seen in isolation. They are seen in a complex landscape with lots of stakeholders having perspectives and input into that. Understanding change management is connected to that, because once you realize that you're in a complex landscape, you realize that that landscape is not crystallized, it moves, it changes. So it's not just about identifying the stakeholders, but it's also identifying how people, stakeholders' perceptions change and move and evolve. A good example is COVID, right? So change management in the program has been to understand how all of the position of the stakeholders in the education environment have radically altered in the last year, and making sense of that enable you to navigate that. And evidence-based decisions, that relates back to inquiry-orientated. We are talking about the process of taking literature and knowledge that you acquire in the program, that's the evidence, and to take it back to the concrete, everyday context you are in, to make evidence-based decisions, using that knowledge to apply it back into your context. Thanks, Lina. We'll get to the next slide. Here again, as you see, the same vision of presenting the values and the themes in a sort of circular way. Again, you have many of the same themes that are present there. Here we're talking about curriculum, so the themes are sometimes a little more sort of anchored down and specific. And it gives you a good overview of some of the topics that would come up in many of the courses. So obviously you have Leading with Technology, which is a very popular course at the moment. It's 560, so you have an entire course which is dedicated to that. You have, you see Communicating Effectively. There are actually two courses on the 540 and the 550, which are looking at communication. One looks at communication internally with regards to the process of supervising people. The other one looks at communication externally in terms of managing relationship with community, with parents, with elders, and things like this. I'll just pick a few more. Planning for school improvement. That is something that comes up a lot in your capstone project, because really you are applying your knowledge to a concrete situation and you're trying to provide an action plan for your school or for your environment that is actually actionable and that people will be able to pick up to solve an issue. Supervision is an entire course on the MAELM. It's the EDLM 580. Enhancing self-awareness is more of a value that you will come across in all of the different courses. In the middle, it's interesting to see as well some of the organic relationships that are developing while you're on MAELM. So you see self and others, and this is again something we're going to come back to over and over again. We have a cohort model. You will be working through the program with the same cohort. You build very grounded, very authentic, very important relationship with these people. Having taught in other institutions, I think this really is something that sets us off entirely from other programs. Normally, you would join a cohort for a course and then be with other people for another course, and you'd be sort of moving around and have obviously a lot of connections, but sometimes much more limited in time. Here, you really have 2 years to build effective working relationship with the people that you're in with every course. And this is really important because obviously leadership, a large part of leadership is about collaborating and working with others, and also, you know, supervising others and taking feedback from others. So that's something that you don't just do for one course, but you actually practice right through the program for 2 years. The only other thing I will add there is, again, in this graphic representation of the program, you see that sort of osmotic relationship between leadership and learning, and you see a two-way arrow. And that's really because the whole program is about showing how learning informs leadership. So we're not here looking at leadership in industry, we're looking at leadership in a very specific context. So what we know about learning and learning curriculum studies and improvement of curriculum directly informs our leadership practices. And the leadership that we explore and investigate within MAELM is specifically related to learning itself. So you see this two-way flow between these two large areas of scholarship. Thanks, Alina. We'll get to the next slide. Here's a graph that we use a lot of graphs in this presentation. I've seen graph overload, but it's a lot easier, right, with visuals with a short time frame like this to explain a lot of the big concepts around the program. This one is important because really it shows the various levels of growth that we expect from you throughout this program. It's a lens that we return to over and over and over again in the courses. So various assignments will lead you back to this graph. And it's really a tool for reflection. And instead of just asking you to reflect, right? Reflect on your practices, reflect on your learning, reflect on your growth. Every time we're going to ask you to actually separate that lens into different perspectives. The first one, as you see in the center, is yourself. So a lot of the reflection as you begin the program is about yourself, your culture, your background, the experiences that you have, and how that frames your views on leadership and your views on teaching. The second layer, and that we come back to often in assignments and exercises, to make you reflect as a learner, because you are a teacher, an educator, you are going to become a leader, but during those 2 years, you are a learner. So there's a lot of reflection that you can do as well on what you're faced with and the experiences that you're having as a learner yourself. The next layer, obviously, is the reflections and educator. This one normally comes very, very naturally because all of you, as you begin the program, normally have had some experience with classroom teaching or education. And the last layer is the one that you are thriving towards, right? So developing this perspective as leaders. And obviously, it's not just a matter of switching you from educator to leader. All of these perspectives are going to inform your future and the rest of your career. So it's just really, the program helps you understand how each of these identities contributes to who you are as a leader. Thank you, Selena. So a question that we often have is, this is the COVID crisis has gone on now for a year. How does it affect the program? How has Royal Roads, and more specifically the School of Education Technology and MAELM, reacted to the COVID crisis? So as Selena explained, we have really had a long tradition at Royal Roads of teaching online and developing online learning and being actually leaders in the world of online learning. So even in its original format, this program is one that is blended in the sense that normally you would begin in the summer with 2 face-to-face courses that have 2 weeks of face-to-face. So there are 8-week courses with 2 weeks that you spend on campus. And that's normally what we call residency. And the rest would have been online anyway. So as you've seen, the rest of the program really was already formatted for that. So all we've really had to rework during the COVID crisis has been that residency. And with the uncertainty last year, we had to make a quick decision to move that to online. This year, we've made a preemptive step of saying, with the uncertainty, we'll move that to online. So the only change is really that in those 2 first courses that run during residency, what we call residency, as in residency for us is really you're coming together, right? It's the first 2 courses that you spend together. You are meeting your cohort, you are meeting your environment, you are learning about the services on campus. That's what we call residency. So the residency part has also gone online. And now the summer runs as 2 courses which are taught online, and the residency elements are blended and embedded right through those 8 weeks. So instead of having the crash 2 weeks here where you would meet everyone and see everything and see all of your services and use all over that, instead we are introducing you to them throughout the 8 weeks. We've done that last year very successfully. We had 30 MAELM students last summer who seem to have enjoyed it immensely. I'm not going to say it's not been without work. It's meant a lot of hard work on our side to quickly flip this and reinvent it, but it has been very successful. What we are hoping is that obviously it's very uncertain times, that it's still very important for you to meet your cohort, and we know that some students really enjoy the physical, social aspects of actually meeting their cohorts. So although you will start with them online and you will know them very well too, we have activities and social activities blended into that as well. We are thinking eventually of the idea of later on in the second year, if COVID sort of fades and things are back to normal, that we could float the idea of having you for a very short residency in the second summer to make up for, unfortunately, the impact of COVID this year. But in terms of strategic running of this, as I said, we've had a year now of doing this, and it has worked very well with lots of feedback from students. So do not be worried about this, and it works very well. Thanks, Selena. We'll go on to the next slide. As you figured out, we're not in the same location, so Selena is changing the slides for me. This is a quick overview. We're getting now more into some of the more technical aspects. There are 2 programs today that we're discussing, and they run simultaneously. We have an MA, so the MA in Education Leadership and Management, which is a 2-year program, 33 credits. And then we also have the Graduate Diploma. And basically, the Graduate Diploma follows the first year of the MAELM program. So at first, all students are together. And the only difference really is that Graduate Diploma students after EDM 560 have completed their program and they are awarded the Graduate Diploma, while the rest of the cohort continues on towards completion of the MAELM program. So both those options are open to you today, and our admission staff and would be very happy to discuss the characteristics of both. But the admissions process is pretty much the same, with the same cutoff lines as well. So any information that you see today would apply to both in terms of admissions as well. Thanks, Lena. Here's again more on the technical side now, the actual your progression through the courses, through the pathway. So I'll just explain it to you a little bit. So you see the first 6 courses up to 560. This is in a way the core part of the program, in the sense that both the diploma students and the master students would be taking the same courses in the same progression through these 6 courses. And then the diploma students would be graduating. The rest of the students would then have 2 choices. Last year, we launched our thesis route. So students have the option of applying to become thesis students. And then after 560, they would go straight, if you go to the bottom of the slides, would go straight into a course called Advanced Research Thesis Proposal, where they design their question, and then a very long course, which is the thesis course, which is really a one-on-one working relationship with the supervisor. So this would be the route if a student decided to apply for the thesis. An MA student who does not apply for the thesis will just simply continue with the course base after 560, 570, 580, 525, and then finish with a capstone project, which is a 6-credit course, which again is a smaller scale research project, which you carry on usually in your own environment. Just give you a quick overview. 501 and 505 are the 2 that I taught during the introductions to the program. So they both run simultaneously during the summer. After that, you only take 1 course at a time. And that's again a particularity of the MAELM program. In most universities, you would probably take several courses at the same time, and then you may actually have long stretches where you take no courses, for example, summer and things like this. This is really a program that has been geared for mid-career educators so that you are able to carry on working and it really fits and blends into your working experience. So the first summer, usually you are able to dedicate yourself to just taking a little bit more of a workload because it's the summer. But right as you begin the school year again in the fall, 510 begins, and then you are taking 1 course at a time for a 9-week period with a break. And then again, a 9-week for the following course. So you just take 1 course at a time. So it's a great relief, I think, for a lot of people who are working, because you can focus on 1 course, and then you get that little break, breathing space, and then you start again and you have the next one. So the 2 years go past very, very quickly, but usually there is not that feeling of being overwhelmed because suddenly your university is asking you to take 2 courses at the same time or 3 courses at the same time. So very seamless, smooth progression right through in terms of workload. I think we've covered everything, Selena, unless there's something I've missed. No? So again, here the same information, just in a graphic route. The only thing that's been added here is you see you have the Introduction to Academic Integrity and the link. So just to explain, these are 2 very short online courses which are really created because WorldWords is very much an online environment and blended environment. So you spend an awful lot of time online. So we think it's very important that you have a foundation to that online learning and teaching. And that's what those 2 courses serve as a purpose. So it's non-assessed, it's compulsory but non-assessed. It is run not by an instructor, but run by facilitators. So there's really no pressure. It's an occasion to get to know your code, get to know your peers, get to know your services. You are introduced to all of the services that you may need. And also you're introduced to some key university sort of values, such academic integrity, how to respect that, and how to be wary of plagiarism and copyright infringement. And then in the link, we also introduce you to our various technological tools. So we use Moodle as a platform to support our teaching and learning. We also use Collaborate and Zoom. So you're introduced to all of these tools as well, so that when you kick off with 501 and 505, you're fully functional, autonomous, and able to navigate all that. So that's what's indicated by that. Thanks, Selena. In terms of the thesis route, I'm just going to add that with regards to the last slide. I know a lot of students often have questions right away. Do I need to discuss that with admission? There's no need to discuss thesis, your desire, your eventual desire to be a thesis student. It is decided normally on the 3rd course. So by the time you get to the 510, at the end of the 510, it's an application that actually is the same deadline applies for the whole school. So all of these students at the end of 510 would then express the desire to be a thesis student. We would explain to you the process. You put in the application. There's a committee that reviews the application, and then those applications are educated then. So that's the only time we need to start worrying about is at the end of summer, going to 510, you can start thinking about it. And at the end of 510 is the time when a student would have to declare their intention to be a thesis student. In terms of what do you require to be admitted as a thesis student, it's a matter of fit. So we have to see, first of all, that you would have the capacity to be an autonomous worker, because obviously 690 is a very long process where you're working alone with a supervisor. So it's not right for everyone. It's great for some people. So we would assess your ability to meet those requirements. We obviously would look at your GPA and your ability to do well in courses as well, particularly because 510 is an introduction to research. So by the end of that, you will yourself have a good idea of whether it's for you and how well you do with issues of practical issues of research. And then there's also the notion of, or the idea of fitting you, matching you with a supervisor. So we also look at your topic and your proposed topic and whether we have someone available to supervise you and provide that support. All of these would come into the decision as to whether the application would be successful. To give you an indication, we had 4 MAELM students applications for the thesis this year, and all 4 were accepted. So I think the students were able to really be able to judge lucidly if this was for them, and it was a very smooth process because we agreed, and then it was a sort of mutual agreement process. It went very well. Okay, Selena, we'll go on to the next one. Another opportunity and characteristics of the MAELM program is that it gives you the opportunity of also taking on one of the International Baccalaureate Organization certificates. It's the IB Advanced Certificate in Leadership Research. So if you are interested in that, you are able to actually benefit from both and to actually receive the IB certificate as you complete the MAELM program. So you may have questions and say, how can I do that? How can I do both? Well, pretty much the way it works is that there's no duplication of work, but it requires that every large assessment, large assignment that you have in the program focuses on the IB context. And that's how you satisfy the IB requirements, is that we are very much aligned in terms of curriculum and perspective with the IB certificate orientation. So simply by making sure that each of the large assignments are focused on an IB context, and obviously you explore the IB literature and that IB perspective, by the time you complete the MAELM program, you would be eligible for the IB Advanced Certificate in Leadership Research. Obviously, the large part is that whether you're a thesis student or a capstone project, your last project is going to be really about an IB context and an IB issue, and that will be, what the largest part of that focuses on. But also, we want to see that focus sustained right through the courses. And we can take some questions if you have questions on that as well. Yeah, I think we can jump this one. In terms of how do you qualify, how do you register for the IB perspective, that is actually very much run by our program coordinators. So once you're admitted and you're in the school, they will actually follow up with that at the key dates. They will tell you, are you interested in this? Is this something you want to do? They will link you up with the IBO platform, make sure you have all the details to register. There is a fee, which is not collected by us. It's collected by the IBO organization. I think it's in pounds. It's something in the region of 150 pounds or something like that in terms of cost. It's a registration fee. That's the only thing that you pay. And then at the end, we supply proof to IBO that you've completed the program and that indeed you did focus on IB. And then you register for completion and for the obtention of the certificate. That's really just the admin that's involved there. And it's supported by our program coordinators. So thanks, Alina. Over to you.
Awesome, Frederic. Thank you so much. We're going to head into a quick cruise through the application process and program requirements. But this is a great time. If you have any questions bubbling about some of the program information we just heard about, pop them in the chat box as we're just around the corner from our question and conversations. So with that, we like to start off by letting you know the admissions into these programs. So we have 2 admission pathways. The first being standard admissions, where applicants should be educational professionals with a 4-year undergraduate degree and a related field from a recognized post-secondary institution, as well as have some relevant work experience. If, as you are hearing that, you thought, okay, maybe not me, but I know this program is for me, I will gain a lot and I will give a lot to this program, that's where flexible admissions comes in. So flexible admissions is for candidates with some undergraduate education and significant relevant work experience. Our flexible admissions applications are assessed on a case-by-case basis. And that's because with flexible admissions, we take into account your whole experience. So not only looking at your academic background, but your professional background, your personal background. We take a very holistic approach to adjudicating your application. And to do that, we do that case by case. And sometimes that leads us to wanting to have a phone call, wanting to explore your documents to make sure we learn all about you and what you can bring to our program and what our program can bring to you. Moving to the application process itself. So we start with the online application, which includes a fee of $126.28. Here I should note that the application process, whether you're looking to come in through standard admissions or flexible admissions, is exactly the same. Where that kicks in is on our end when we're looking at your files. So if you don't see a checkbox, that is A-okay. The process will be the same regardless of which application pathway you're looking at submitting through. So once your online application is in, we then look for some supporting documents, starting with official transcripts, a personal statement, a structured resume, and 2 letters of reference. Our website is a wonderful guide for navigating through these supporting documents because it'll help provide some tips and tricks and guidelines as to what you should include in your personal statement, your structured resume, and how you can submit documents like your official transcripts and your letters of reference.
I may jump in there just for 1 minute, Selena, just to explain. Sometimes people with a personal statement have questions. Really, if you go back to what I described, right, that we really ideally are looking for people who've had some classroom experience, some experience teaching, and are looking to develop capacity for leadership. And that's what we're looking for in a personal statement. It's a chance for you to demonstrate that, to showcase it if it's not clear from your resume, and to show in what ways you have some experience from the classroom in terms of pedagogy, in terms of actual teaching, and for what reasons, what motivates you to be looking for that leadership role. So sometimes it may be that you are already one toe into leadership. Someone has asked you to take on a project, or you may have been told by someone you should really think about leadership. All of these facts would be things that would be very relevant in a personal statement. It's really an organic fit. We want to make sure that you fit this profile. And so as much information as you can provide to showcase this is really what we're looking for. Okay, thanks, Selena.
Thanks, Frederic. And I so appreciate what you added, being able to connect with alumni, both virtually and in person, pre-COVID-19. Hearing them connect with prospective students is always so exciting because the personal statement comes up right off the bat as an opportunity where you really get to understand, yes, this program, yes, me, and you set the foundation for your journey with Rural Roads. So the personal statement ends up being quite an exciting document to put together. So incoming intakes. We have our next intake beginning June 14th, 2021, which puts our application deadline just around the corner at March 14th, 2021. If you're looking a little further out, we do have our 2022 date posted as well. So that intake will begin June 13th, 2022, putting its application deadline at March 13th, 2022. So financial aid, as Frederic mentioned, we have an array of services on our campus to help support your learning journey with Rural Roads. And those services kick in before you even start learning with Rural Roads. Our financial aid team is staffed with financial aid and awards specialists who have their fingertips on all sorts of different financial aid opportunities, such as loans, awards, research scholarships, and other types of funding to help you finance this next journey in your post-secondary education. So looking at the bottom of this slide, you'll see that we've included their website, but also their direct phone lines as well, in case you want to connect with them directly. So please feel free to cruise the website. The Financial Aid's office also has a wonderful blog where students are able to post about their experience, awards they've won, and our financial aid office is able to provide some tips and tricks. So I believe Lisa will pop that in the chat box. And speaking of Lisa, Lisa is one example of the wonderful team we have here on our campus to help answer any questions you may have about this program or any others as well. So if you'd like to connect with Lisa and her team, you can find them at learn.more@ruralroads.ca. And if you're joining us internationally, our international admission and registration teams Would love to continue the conversation at learn.more.international@ruralroads.ca. And with that, we have come to the end of our presentation portion of our webinar today, which also brings us to the start of our Q&A. So please, if you have any questions that are bubbling around, pop them in our chat box. We also like to give a quick shout out to our School of Education and Technology blog. So if you want to learn more about what education and technology means at Rural Roads, check out set.ruralroads.ca/blog to learn more.
There's a few things I wanted to mention, Selena, as well, that I forgot to talk about. The scholar practitioner model. So one thing that's important to realize as well is that unlike other institutions where really you might be taught mostly by academics who are just working within faculty, we have a mix here. So I'm co-faculty and I work, that's my job. I'm based here in the whole time, but a lot of you instructors will be what we call associate faculty. So they will actually be scholars with a PhD that are working within academia, but they are still involved in the school districts and in the schools. So they may still have a role as a leader or as a consultant and still working. So this is an essential characteristic of the program too, because you do get that osmosis of information. And let's take COVID again. As soon as COVID came up and it was obviously tackled in the courses, it wasn't just an abstract reflection on what COVID issues could arise. Right away, we had that flow of information from all of these instructors who are still teaching and still in the school board, able to bring in all of those problematics and those thematics into the workings of the programs themselves. Another question we haven't mentioned much, we did in passing at the beginning, is the clientele. So we have a wide range of clientele on the MAELM program. I say we have BC teachers, but we really have teachers throughout Canada at present. And beyond that, we have a lot as well of international educators who are working overseas who really like MAELM, and it really fits their tempo and their work life. And because so much of it is online, obviously they're able to follow just as well, irrespective of job changes and being in different places in the world. And that has gone on even despite all the COVID chaos. So it's one of the strengths of the program as well, having that mix. And that's incredible too, because that's your cohort. So you may actually be working on projects with someone who's an assistant prof in China, an assistant leader in China, a vice principal working through Malaysia, as we have at the moment, in one of the cohorts, and you benefit from all that sort of shared expertise and those varied perspectives on the different issues. So that's all I wanted to ask.
We have a great question in the chat box from Renee. So are there scheduled days to Zoom meet with our cohort? For example, a friend of mine is doing her master's and they meet every second Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Is this the same with Rural Roads, or is the timeline different?
So you meet with your cohort on different days. That depends on the instructor. So what happens in most courses, and obviously we realize that your timetable might change, right, as you go through the program. So that's why every time a new course begins, normally the instructor will actually do a poll. They'll do a poll and figure out what's the best, most convenient time for people to meet. Weekends, for example, are popular, but you'll find some cohorts hate weekends. They never want to meet on weekends. They want to keep weekends for family, and that's totally fine. We're able to work around that. And normally, even at the moment, we're able to hit the end of the day, and that still works for our colleagues who are in the Far East, and it's their morning, and it works out. So really, this worked on a personalized basis with the cohort itself. So not just generally or not throughout the program. Every time you begin, you will have an opportunity to say what works best for you. Asynchronous, it's important to note that asynchronous sessions are not compulsory anyway. They're really there to support your learning. So you'll never be penalized because you can't make a session. They are always recorded. The recording appears immediately on your Moodle platform. You can watch it even if you're just a couple of hours delayed. Obviously, the more you are on there, the more you engage, the more you benefits your outcomes. But there are lots of practical ways for you to manage any issues or any clashes that you may have as well. So yeah, I'm teaching a course at the moment, and they prefer, for example, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that's what we alternate. We'll do, a 6 o'clock on Tuesday or 6 o'clock on Thursday, and we alternate from week to week. But there's all sorts of arrangements depending on the specific needs of the course.
Amazing, Frederic. Thank you. We have a question that was asked from one of our registrants that I think it's a good time to ask that now. How many hours should I put aside for moving through this program every week? I know that's a hard question to answer, but do you have kind of a range of number of hours someone should put aside?
It's hard because obviously different students function at different tempo. There's a sort of I would say that having a couple of hours, a couple of days a week to dedicate to the program is really the benchmark, I think. And obviously, again, sometimes people want to use the weekends, sometimes they don't want to use the weekends. Some weeks are easier than others because sometimes you have less practical tasks. I think a lot of students have a routine by which they will go on the forums to check the conversation, because it's not just about the content, obviously, and the main relationship with the instructor, but it's also about your relationship with peers. So a lot of time can be spent sometimes on checking in with your peers and that sort of social capital building. And that can represent a lot of hours, but also not necessarily compulsory hours. It's hours that students want to invest in this and want to build that canvas of relationship with their colleagues. Again, there's weeks when you will maybe have a much greater interest in certain topics and you will go over the prescribed number of hours. But I would say, in a practical way, I would say 2 hours twice a week is normally for a constant sort of commitment that we want to see from students to be able to meet the requirements and complete the activities.
Amazing. We have another question here. What is the general cohort size for this program?
So it has varied between, I would say 20 and 30. I think we're at 30 now and this year. So this has been a particularly large intake last year, despite COVID. But we didn't want really to turn people away. And it's usually in that region between the 20 and the 30.
Wonderful. And we have one more question that Lisa's actually answered in the chat box, but I'll read it aloud for anyone who may be watching this recording. So it was stated that as part of the application, we would need 2 references. Should they be academic or professional? And Lisa responded with, normally a personal character reference and a work-related reference is required. And then, of course, shared some helpful links to those pages as well. So it looks like we have wrapped up the questions for today. Of course, just because our webinar is coming to a close doesn't mean the opportunity to ask questions has as well. We are all here, always eager to continue the conversation for those who are joining us live and watching the recording as well. So once again, if you have any questions, please connect with Lisa and her team at learn.more@ruralroads.ca. And if you're joining us internationally, learn.more.international@ruralroads.ca. Frederic, was there anything else you wanted to add before we signed off today?
I don't think so. I know that I do get lots of questions regarding the program via the admissions office, and obviously that's a channel that is perfectly fine. It's not the questions don't have to run today. If you have questions, admission staff will be very happy to answer them themselves or pass them on to me if they think it's something that requires my input. So don't hesitate. We're there for that and to answer those questions.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We hope you have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, depending where and when you're watching this recording.